Hi, you've just tuned into the Creative Life Podcast, the place where creatives go for inspiration. My name is Jessica, and I'm the host, and I'm joined today by Dr. Jacqueline Gibbons, our co-host. And Dr. Gibbons, who do we have as our guest today?
Well, today on our show, we get to explore the world of creativity with a poet, advocate, public speaker, and leader. Her name is Jewel Rodgers. Now, hold on. She has a very impressive resume. So not only has she been nominated twice for an Omaha Entertainment and Arts Awards. In 2022, she was a Union for Contemporary Art Fellow. In 2023, an Andy Warhol Populous Fund grantee. And this year, 2024, a Blackberry Peach Poetry Slam finalist.
Absolutely. So I have to be very transparent with you. Every time we do these episodes, I'm like, okay, how did you get this person? So I had to have a fangirl moment with you because you said, oh, Jessica, we're going to get a poet on. I'm trying to get this poet on our show. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. We love poetry here. I was like, who, Dr. Gibbons, who are you trying to get on the show? And when you said Jewel, I was like, hold on. Jewel from ICANN, because we actually saw you in 2023. You were part of the opening session of ICANN, which is a women's leadership conference here in Omaha. And I was like, oh my gosh, how amazing. Because our audience today, they are just so fortunate to be able to hear from you, just to hear your voice and your creativity and how you're bringing yourself to this field of creativity. So I'm excited just to get some insights from you.
I have to add to the resume thing.
Ooh,
this year, I was nominated for State Poet of Nebraska. We're in the final rounds of that process, but to be nominated at all is quite an honor. So I got to throw that in there.
Oh,
that is an
thank you
amazing honor.
Congratulations.
Thank
Oh
you.
my
When do you
goodness.
hear the final word?
About the end of the year.
Okay. That's not too
Do you
far.
submit one piece? Is one piece selected for that? How is that?
Sure. So State Poet is a 5-year term.
Okay.
And the process starts by being nominated by someone. That's what kicks it off. And then you need letters of support. And then after that, you submit your CV or your resume and you submit some work samples. And then after that, if you are shortlisted, you are invited for a final interview. And then after that, they rank you and they send those rankings top 3 to the governor for the governor to then choose.
Wow. I didn't know that.
This is so
that
exciting.
is so exciting because
Wow.
we were definitely
Yeah.
checking out all of your socials and everything. That is amazing.
That's
I'm
so
so
great.
excited.
I can't wait to hear.
Now we're really excited.
know.
Okay. Dr. Gibbons.
Reel it
Okay,
in.
kick us off with our official first question.
Okay. So what core memory from your childhood helped form your poetic voice?
It's actually really interesting. I credit Paul Bryant and a teacher I had, Mr. Green. So in elementary school, sometime in there, I went to an after-school program called the Wesley House. And the Wesley House taught you business acumen. They taught you about stocks. And then they also taught you etiquette at a table, how to shake a hand, and how to do public speaking. Now, at the very same time, I had somehow gotten my hands on a book of poetry from Maya Angelou. And I had a 6th grade class assignment from Mr. Green. And the assignment was to write a poem. And so we wrote our poems. And then it was time to say our poems out loud. And that's when it all came together.
Excellent.
So I've been doing that ever since.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Wow.
It's those core moments. Those core moments really have the power to transform you. Like, that's a memory. You're going all the way back to grade school and you're just like, it was that class. I remember that book. We were learning these items. I stood up. That's the power of a core moment. That's beautiful. Wow.
Right. And how terrific that you're able to attribute that to particular educators.
I know, what an honor. What a blessing to have people like that in my life that shaped that trajectory. Because who else was going to be, no one else had introduced public speaking to me at that age. And so would I have been a spoken word poet in the way that I am now if I didn't have that experience? Or even the 6th grade experience to have a teacher who validated what I was doing to begin with.
Right.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Wow.
Thank you.
Okay. So there is a poem titled Mother, and it received an honorable mention in 2021 from the Nebraska Poetry Society. I'm going to read only the last line, and then I'm going to ask a question about your creative process. So for our audience at home, definitely you want to read the entire poem, because when I got to this last line, the beginning of the poem, it was me, I was like understanding and listening. But when I got to the last line, it made me feel like I needed to do something. So I'm going to read the last line. And then once again, I want you to just talk about that creative process, immerse us into it. Okay? So it says, when my baby speaks of their mother, I dream she speaks of a woman triumphant in a battle she need never bear. I was like, am I going to be that mother? And so tell me about this. Like, how did you get to this line?
A challenge indeed.
Well, I wrote that poem a long time ago. It existed even far beyond then, I think maybe for 4 years or so, and I just revisit it every now and then. So the process, it's interesting. Sometimes people will ask me to speak for like a conference or an event or something, and my process looks a lot different for that. Okay. My process for that, I might have 30 pages for a 3-page poem, just hashing it out, trying things, whatever. But when it's mine, for me, and I just wrote it on my own accord, no one asked me to, it sort of just falls right out. And then from then on, I'm sort of maybe crafting it, trying to use some strategy, but for the most part, I've said what I said and I know what I'm saying. So that's kind of the process for that, which just was very natural. And then there's always a second piece of just learning how to speak it, how to say it, what it sounds like, where the emotion hits. That too is a bit of a process. A lot of the times what I'll do is I'll record it and then listen to myself and tweak from there until I like how it sounds, as well as how it reads. So that was my process for that. I will say that the last line is really about addressing yourself so that the people that you're raising or the people that you are around are not going through the same things that you've had to go through because you have yet to overcome said battle, said struggle, whatever it is.
Absolutely, that's what I felt. So I'm currently in my doctoral journey, and I'm working on just looking at psychological safety for women in corporate America. And so when I read that line, I was like, am I doing enough in this space? Because I do not want my daughter to walk into the same space that I'm currently existing in today. And so when I felt like up until that point, I'm feeling like, okay, I see this regulation, I'm connecting, but it just made me feel like, now you do something. Like it was a whisper, like, hey you, reader, it's your turn now. Like I'm passing the baton to you. So that's just the power that poetry has. No, there's not that many mediums that can leap off a page and make you feel something inside of you to say, okay, now do some action.
And that final line isn't it. It's a challenge. It's a call to action, but it's also a thinking on what is your legacy? And that's powerful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what I love is not only your craft of developing poetry, but delivery. The speaking itself is definitely a craft. And that's a part that many poets don't even step into, and you've decided to take on both.
Well, it was a gift. Like I said, Paul Bryant, I always have to shout him out, Wesley House. That is how that started. And it was funny because I remember when I did read the poem in 6th grade, my friend was like, how do you read it like that? And I was like, I don't know. and I really didn't know. Yeah. It just sort of was happening at that time. But the whole part, I guess, that's so important. And I spent a lot of time on the emotion. And at this point, sometimes it does come natural because it's just how I feel for real. And if you think about it, when you're mad, you sound mad, you know? Yeah. When you're happy, you sound really happy, you sound excited. And so that's how the words come out. They come out with that emotion. But I feel like it's so important for me, when I am sharing my work and I'm sharing my poetry, I want people to feel it. And you feel it so much more when you hear the emotion in the words.
Correct. I'm with
Absolutely.
you. Yeah.
I'm with you too.
Terrific.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. It's called intersectionality. And to summarize it quickly for our audience, intersectionality is the study of overlapping or intersecting social identities and related systems of oppression, domination, or discrimination. And the reason why I bring this term into our interview today is because when I was looking at your work, when I'm looking at what you stand for, and also we've heard you as well, it just feels like there's aspects of your work that are so intersectional. And how can creatives bring their intersectional selves into spaces that are divided?
Well, my first thought was like, you just do. You just do bring yourself in those spaces. And then I thought about all the ways that coming into a space so raw can distract people from the message. And that sometimes it actually is vital to be a little bit more strategic in how you're saying something so that the message can actually be received. So for me personally, when I'm thinking about occupying this space of intersectionality, I do think a lot about how other people receive messages. And sometimes I will say things differently, or I won't say something at all until I feel like it will be received. And that's sometimes a double-edged sword. Sometimes there's some give and take to that, because sometimes I'm silent in times where I maybe shouldn't have been. And sometimes I'm a little overly communicative in times I shouldn't have been, or maybe times where it was least effective. So trial and error, but I still try to show up authentically. This question reminds me of this collection that I just finished. So I'm self-publishing this probably.
Tell us about it.
It's called Wax Over Water. And it is kind of a two-part collection. The first half of it primarily focuses on young adulthood, growing into adulthood, and what that looked like for me through poetry. I call it a verse memoir. The second half is really my experience in real estate development. I'm a financial analyst. My title is development manager, but I do a lot of numbers and whatnot. And I sit in a lot of city council meetings and other meetings and occupy these spaces that aren't as accessible to a lot of the friends and family that I grew up around. And I wanted to create something that talked about that, because we have a very interesting relationship with real estate development, particularly where I'm from and communities like mine around the country of historically redlined communities. And this conversation about gentrification or investment or just the introduction of new space in general, that was kind of not only a taboo topic, but something that was really foggy, because there's all this language that I've gotten a master's degree in real estate development. Mm-hmm. And at that point, when I got to school for it, that's when I was like, whoa, what's going on? This is crazy. And so my privilege in that space to be able to go and get a master's and learn about all this stuff, how do we talk about that back home when you don't have that? And so this collection touches on things like that. And to me, when you're asking about intersectionality, that's where I find myself in this odd space of being a Black woman from a historically redlined community, working at a real estate company and doing real estate development in real time and thinking through all these things I never had to think through. Right. Before, it was just like, who is this developer coming in our community? And now all of a sudden I'm thinking about the numbers and the construction and the finance and the design and the land acquisition and the real estate documents, all these things that, that we don't need, I didn't even know to think about until I learned about it.
Right.
And so to your point about intersectionality and showing up as you are, like in that way I am, and I'm attempting to use language and in some ways entertainment to talk about these topics in a way that can become more accessible. Mm-hmm. And I think about, when thinking about when to speak or when not to speak or how to say this or that. I'm really at the baseline thinking about accessibility and how can this be most accessible to whoever I am interacting with.
Absolutely. So we had another guest come on, a band that used their craft as well to speak to different issues as well. So one of the things, there's a lot to piece out. So in our debriefing episode, we have a lot to go through. But I'm just going to pick out one or two little nuggets that Jewel has given us. And that is, one, you're talking about the accessibility, the communication, the language that we use, and how your poetry, your medium of art, it allows you to do something that otherwise is really difficult to do. Like you said, it's murky. I mean, it can also be kind of loaded, especially when you're talking about redlining. I mean, sometimes people just get defensive just immediately when that comes in, but you're coming in with a poetic memoir. And I think people are more open. There's a softening there because you're already coming in to immerse yourself in someone else's experience, but you're bringing all of these intersectional parts of yourself, the real estate, your background, your education, and that's the power of creativity, is that you can do that. So you know which band I'm thinking about, Richard Mary Pistol, that's correct. And that they also talked about suicide prevention and how they brought that into their art and their presence on stage and how they stood for that and just giving that message. So I think it's beautiful that you are finding your place, but you're also inviting people into the spaces that you're creating. That's really beautiful.
And when you were discussing the intersectionality and the receptivity, and sometimes it can be very difficult to judge what are they open to. But when you mentioned her poetry it softens while speaking truth, and that's showing up in true authenticity, yet being mindful of the reader, the listener, while also acknowledging you don't really have to be mindful of them because what needs to be said, but you soften it. You make it easier, make it more receptive. Yeah.
And you don't get them all. Like not everybody's going to receive the message.
You just hope that at some point they are receptive.
And you hope that it feels good in your soul. Like I hope it feels good in my soul, even if someone doesn't quite get it. There's this feeling that happens when I read something or I hear something that I've done that I've been working on for a minute, and then I'm like, oh, that's it. Like even if you don't receive it, if I've got the that's it feeling, look, I'm feeling good about it.
Right.
You can't get them all, you know.
Right.
But if it feels good in my soul, I feel like that to me is success. That's what I want.
Yes, I love that. And I need to say, I think that's such a great lesson for all other creatives. And you provide mentorship. So you're a contributing member of the Nebraska Writers Collective All Rights Reserved Festival as a slam coach, a workshop facilitator. So can you talk to me about nurturing this creativity in others where just as you do, you show up authentically, but you know that whether a person is receptive or not, if you have that feeling, then your job is done. Then you have fed you have fed your creative self. Can you talk about that work as you help guide others in their creative journey?
Actually, I find it to be a fulfilling and essential learning experience. And so I continue to do it.
How is that a learning experience?
Because I'm working with people. So I'm learning how to work with various groups of people. This year, I was recently reintroduced to a group of middle schoolers at Girls Inc. with a co-teacher, Hannah Clark. Hannah Clark is excellent with that age group. I was not. and so, but it was excellent. After the first go, she makes some tweaks. We start thinking about different ways we can engage with them. And by the third or fourth one, we kind of got like a routine down. Shout out to Hannah Clark. And now I feel more comfortable if anyone were to ask me to work with middle schoolers, like I could, yes, sure. A lot of that is, I don't have to do that. I can just write poems and speak and stuff, and people will still be like, great job, love that. I think it's really essential to be able to share it, though, and to learn how to help others and craft others. That's the whole reason that I'm here anyway, is because someone took some time to craft me. Mind you, it was someone's job, like he was a 6th grade teacher, okay, but how well you do your job still says a lot. And so if he didn't care as much, would I have been the same? Would the introduction have been the same? I don't know. And so now I find myself in a similar space where I am able to mentor someone or grow someone or tap into their creative process and help them explore whatever is out there for them. And perhaps then that impacts them for the future when they're growing. What can that lead them to? It doesn't have to be poetry, but even a deeper sense of self is very essential and a gift to be able to attain at any age, but especially in the age group that I'm working in, which is generally speaking college and below. So I just think it's an excellent learning experience, and I'm excited to do it.
Absolutely.
And how fortunate they are to be able to learn with you. What systems of support have you created to be successful as a poet, advocate, leader? Oh, and you have a daytime job as well.
I do. I'm getting back into that at this time. Speaking of the daytime job, that is essentially 9 to 5. And this is a whole moment. I remember meeting this guy who was a financial analyst. He'd been an analyst for a while. I'm sure he has a different title now, but he was an analyst. And I asked him how often he worked, because I was curious about his hours for his job. And he says, usually I get up at 6 and I head into the office, and then I, probably work around 5:36, and I come home, eat dinner, I'll probably get in a couple hours after dinner, and then, about 10 or 11, I guess I go to sleep, and then I do it again tomorrow. And I was like, that did not sound enjoyable to me, okay? Right. And then I thought about how I utilize my time. And at the time, I was going after some grants, some artist grants and stuff from my work. And I was getting up at 5:30 so I could work on whatever application or submittal at the time. And then I was going to work, and it was a little busy at work, so maybe I'm showing up anytime between 7:30 and 9. And then maybe I'm staying late that day, so now we're back at 5:30, 6 o'clock. And then after that, I likely have some event that I'm going to, or maybe I'm working again or another application, or I'm doing something else entirely. And by the time I lay my head down on the pillow, it's 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock. And so how am I any different from this guy that I'm over here cringing about? I didn't know. So that was recent. That was a few months ago. And it goes on and off sometimes as my interests change or my goals change or whatever I'm going after at the time changes. Sometimes it's a lot, it's very intense. And other times, once maybe I've gotten to a point where I feel like, I don't want to say, when I've gotten to a point where I feel like I can pause, but really where I feel like okay, I'm going to take a step back now because this is not working long term. Systems that I'm starting to create really just honestly are focused around when I'm sleeping and when I'm eating.
Self-care.
Yeah, sounds very simple, but that's how I'm building even the systems of support right now. I wanted to start reading more, and so I did. But when am I doing that? I'm doing it a few minutes before I go to bed, or I'm doing it in the morning when I wake up, or both, actually. And now maybe I've submitted a lot of these applications. Maybe I have a more consistent system. I've started using a chunk of the Sunday morning to work on submissions so that I'm not just like frantically trying to do it every hour before work, And so my systems of support, they change based on what I'm going through at the time. But I think it's just about being present-minded enough to check yourself when things are not going as you feel they probably should be going.
Right.
If you are, if I'm, tired, or I'm stressed out, or I'm barely sort of able to just breathe, it feels like, that's probably a good sign I need to work on my systems of support. Okay. But that really starts to then just bear down to like the essentials of when are you sleeping actually? Like how much sleep are you getting, and what's your routine with eating? I'm not gonna say anyone needs to eat like 3 times a day, but what is healthy for you, and are you doing that?
Right.
So there's that. And then just a simple, like it is as simple as routine and discipline. Like it is. Like at the end of the day, most of us know what we should be doing, and it's a matter of like if you're gonna do it or not.
Right.
So my systems of support are really stemming around when I'm sleeping, when I'm eating, and how intentionally I'm making space for my art. Like having a block in my day and sticking to it as best I can. And by as best I can, like I mean like, okay, I go visit my mom and now it's Sunday morning and we want to have Sunday breakfast or brunch or whatever. Look, I'm gonna go have the brunch, okay?
Right.
But over the long term, how well are you sticking to what you've asked yourself to do?
Right.
Like, are you honoring that intention or not?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
It's
Well,
keeping promises to yourself and knowing what you need.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And being real about what you can handle too. Like sometimes we make promises to ourselves and they're like sky high. And it's like, great, okay, you got this big goal, but also, does that make sense for you where you're at right now? You have a big goal, but do you truly feel like you're going to be able to hold yourself to that? And if not, well, think about that. Like what adjustments can you make to ensure that you can be more consistent?
absolutely. Well, this has been an amazing episode, and I can't believe it, but we're already at the end. So thank you everyone so much for joining us today. This is the Creative Life podcast, where creatives go for inspiration. And if you want to find out more, please check out our streaming and our website, all of our platforms to learn more about Jewel Rodgers. And as well as you can like it, subscribe this episode, share this episode, all of the good things. So thank you so much.